There is a reason two people can stand in front of the same opportunity and only one recognizes it. Chosen one. Saturday may be a big day, but not because I can promise you that a miracle will appear at a certain hour. I cannot. The reason is deeper than that. One person can enter a day surrounded by useful information and see only noise. Another enters the same kind of day and suddenly notices the conversation, the idea, the decision, or the opening that changes what happens next. People call that difference luck, discipline, intuition. But there is another layer. A layer involving the condition of the receiver itself. If you have walked into a room and forgotten why, reread the same sentence twice, or opened your phone without remembering what you needed, do not dismiss that. The fog you have been blaming on your character may be hiding more than your productivity. It may hide what you should notice. Before this message ends, I will show you why someone can be near an opening and still experience life as delay. I will show you the hidden loop that makes clarity harder when you blame yourself for losing it. And I will show you the threshold that can turn an ordinary day into a turning point. Hold one question. If the thing you need were placed directly in front of you this Saturday, would your current state help you recognize it or hide it inside the noise? Most people think waiting means nothing is happening until something dramatic arrives. But sometimes waiting is not the real problem. Sometimes your attention has become so divided that even an important signal feels ordinary. You check one thing, then another. You start a task, then stop. You feel pressure, then avoid the very action that could reduce it. Then you tell yourself the same story. Maybe the timing is not right. Maybe I need one more sign. Maybe I should wait until I feel certain. That story can sound patient and spiritual, but sometimes it is simply confusion wearing a sacred name. Here is the first distinction. Delay and non-recognition are not always the same thing. Something can be present before you know how to name it. An answer can arrive as information. An opening can arrive as a small decision. This is why Saturday deserves your attention. Not because the calendar holds magic, not because a date can guarantee an outcome. It matters because you can choose the condition in which you meet the day. You can enter scattered or clear. Think about the last week. How many times did you reach for your phone without a clear reason? How many times did you postpone one meaningful task while doing 5 easy ones? How often did you ask for clarity when you really needed one honest decision? That is not a judgment, it is a clue. The mind under pressure can make uncertainty feel larger than it is. When that happens, you do not just lose focus. You can lose confidence in your ability to know what matters. Once confidence drops, another pattern begins. You wait longer. You ask for more confirmation. Then, every quiet day starts feeling like proof that nothing is moving. But what if the quiet day is not empty? What if you have not yet identified what deserves your attention? Chosen one, you do not need to force an answer right now. You only need to notice the difference. Notice the difference between waiting for something new and failing to see what is already asking for a response. If that feels familiar, say this quietly. I see it now. There is a name for the moment when what was invisible becomes obvious. Once you understand it, Saturday stops being a prediction. It becomes recognition. The moment when what was invisible becomes obvious has a name. I call it the recognition threshold. It is the point where a day stops feeling empty because your attention finally locks onto what was already asking to be seen. Chosen one, most people think a turning point must announce itself. They expect a call, a payment, a dramatic sign. So they scan the outside world while ignoring the quieter forms in which change often begins. Maybe it is the same idea, returning again. Maybe it is a conversation you almost skipped. Maybe it is a task that keeps bothering you. because part of you knows it matters. This is where the first breakthrough begins. You may have been saying nothing is happening, but that is not always the same as nothing being available. The human mind does not notice everything around it with equal strength. Attention selects, attention filters, attention gives some things weight and lets other things disappear. An opportunity can be real and still fail to feel important. Useful information can still pass through your day unnoticed. A simple next step can remain invisible because you are waiting for something louder. So deny the old explanation for a moment. Maybe your delay is not proof that timing has rejected you. Maybe your silence is not proof that heaven has forgotten you. Maybe the absence of drama has become evidence that there is nothing to recognize. That is a dangerous mistake because it trains you to wait for intensity instead of meaning. You begin asking when instead of what. When will it happen? When will the door open? When will I know? But recognition asks a different question. What keeps returning? What deserves attention? What am I avoiding because it looks too ordinary? Waiting asks when. Recognition asks what. That contrast moves you from passive prediction into active observation. Think about someone who receives a small piece of advice during an ordinary conversation. At first it sounds unimportant. Weeks later, they realize that sentence contained the exact direction they needed. The information did not become valuable later. Their ability to recognize its value changed. The same thing happens with decisions. You can know a boundary is needed and still postpone it. You can know an application should be sent and still wait. You can know a project deserves one focused hour and still ask for motivation. This does not mean every repeated thought is a sign. It means you should stop demanding supernatural packaging before you examine ordinary evidence. So here are 3 questions to carry into Saturday. What keeps repeating in my attention? What am I dismissing because it looks too simple? What would I do next if I stopped demanding complete certainty? Do not rush the answers. Let them become specific. Not someday, not your whole future. Ask about the next honest move that already has enough evidence to deserve attention. This is how the recognition threshold works. You do not force the world to reveal more. You become better at seeing what is already available. If this touches something you already know, mark it. Say it quietly. I recognize the door. Not because every door is yours, not because every impulse is correct, but because you will examine what is present before calling the day empty. Now a harder question appears. Why can an intelligent, sincere, spiritually sensitive person stand in front of something important and still fail to recognize it? The answer has less to do with intelligence than most people think. It begins in fog, and once fog becomes a pattern, it can quietly change the way you interpret your life. Fog rarely arrives with an announcement. It builds through small moments. You lose a word in the middle of a sentence. You open 3 tabs and finish none. You sit down to do something important, then suddenly feel tired enough to postpone it. Chosen one. When this happens often enough, you start explaining it to yourself. Maybe I am lazy. Maybe I am weaker. Maybe I have lost my edge. The symptoms feel personal, but the symptoms do not automatically define your identity. Fog can be a condition, and when you mistake a condition for who you are, you create a second problem on top of the first. Here is the pattern. Fog creates hesitation. Hesitation creates missed action. Missed action creates self-blame. Self-blame adds more pressure. And pressure makes it harder to think clearly the next time something important appears. I call this the fog loop. It does not need to be dramatic. It only needs to repeat often enough that you stop questioning it. Imagine you need to send one important message. You know what it should say, but your mind feels crowded. Hours pass. Now the task carries emotional weight it did not have before. Soon the delay starts feeling like evidence about who you are. So deny the common explanation. You are not automatically lazy because focus is difficult. You are not automatically weak because decisions feel heavy, and you are not spiritually abandoned because your mind is tired. The more useful question is simpler. What condition am I bringing into this decision? Are you rested enough to think? Have you consumed too much input? Are you carrying 5 unresolved choices into a 6th one? Uncertainty grows when mental bandwidth shrinks. A small choice can feel enormous. A reversible step can feel permanent. Soon hesitation starts looking like wisdom. That is why self-blame is expensive. It does not restore clarity. It reduces trust in your own judgment. Then you ask for more confirmation before every move, which creates even more delay. The way out begins with 3 clearings. First, clear 1 physical distraction. Second, clear 1 unresolved decision. Choose the smallest honest answer you already know. Third, clear 1 unnecessary source of input. You do not need 10 more opinions if the next step is already visible. Small clearings can help you reset. Now picture Saturday morning. You wake up and do not reach for your phone immediately. You let the room stay quiet for a few minutes. You notice your breathing. Then you ask one question: what matters first today? Maybe the answer is 1 email, 1 application, 1 focused hour, 1 conversation you delayed. Because the noise is lower, the task no longer competes with 20 other signals. That is the future I want you to feel. Not a life where every answer arrives perfectly, a life where your attention can recognize the next useful step before doubt builds another wall. You are not fighting your destiny. You may be fighting accumulated noise. That distinction matters because destiny feels untouchable, while noise can be reduced. So before Saturday, do not ask for a perfect state. Clear 1 distraction, close 1 small loop, remove 1 unnecessary input. Then notice what becomes easier to see. You do not need to solve your whole life tonight. You only need to stop calling every moment of fog a verdict about who you are. And now, another question opens. If clarity can fade under pressure, why do some people lose access to the sharpness and creativity they remember from earlier years? That comes next, because what feels lost may not be gone. It may be access that has become harder to reach. Chosen 1. Many people quietly notice something about themselves. They remember being sharper when they were younger. Curiosity came faster. Imagination came without permission. 1 idea could hold their attention for an hour. Then, adulthood arrived with another rhythm. Notifications, deadlines, responsibilities, constant switching. You learn to divide attention across many small demands, and after enough years that divided state can start feeling normal. This does not mean your mind was perfect as a child. It does not mean adulthood stole some mystical power from you. But many people do experience less stable access to creativity, sustained attention, and deep absorption as life becomes more fragmented. That distinction matters, because losing ACCESS is not the same as losing capacity. You may still carry more ability than your current state allows you to use consistently. Think back to a time when you could become absorbed in something without checking the clock. Drawing, building, reading. Your mind simply wanted to know what came next. As life gets louder, exploration often shrinks. You start scanning for what is urgent instead of noticing what is meaningful. You respond faster, but you reflect less. Then you start assuming that this reduced access is simply who you are now. You say, I used to be creative, I used to focus, I used to trust my instincts. But used to is not always a final sentence. Sometimes it describes a condition that changed. There is an old Greek word that helps here, Kairos. It points toward the fitting moment, the decisive moment, the moment that asks for response. Chronos is measured time. 1 hour after another. 1 day after another. Saturday is Chronos on the calendar, but it can become Kairos in your life. Not because the date carries magic, because a normal day can become decisive when you finally recognize what it is asking from you. Maybe the decisive moment is not dramatic. Maybe it is the morning you protect your attention, or the hour you stop treating mental fog like a personal failure. This is why access matters. A meaningful moment can arrive, but if your attention is fractured, it can pass through your day without landing. Now hold something without trying to solve it yet. Researchers have spent decades studying how different regions of the brain specialize, cooperate, and communicate during complex tasks. Some of that work becomes interesting when you remember the receiver question from earlier, because the phrase, condition of the receiver, may be less metaphorical than it first sounded. I will return to that later. Not because science can tell you what your destiny is, it cannot, but because it may help explain why clarity feels available on one day and unreachable on another. For now, keep the practical question sharp. What if some of what you have called delay has been intensified by fragmentation? What if you do not need more pressure? What if you need better access? If that distinction lands, say this quietly: I enter Kairos. Not because you control the future, because you can choose to meet the present with more attention. Most people want prediction. They want to know exactly what happens next. But understanding gives you something prediction cannot. It gives you a way to respond, even when the future stays open. So carry one question with you as we move deeper. What if what feels like a spiritual delay is sometimes being intensified by a mind that is simply too fragmented to recognize its next move? Do not answer too quickly. The next part will show you why that question matters more than it seems. I call it the receiver gap. And once you see it, many quiet seasons begin to look different. Most people assume that if an opportunity is important enough, they will notice it automatically. If the answer is real, it should feel obvious. If the next step matters, surely something inside will light up. But importance does not guarantee recognition. Your attention is selective. Stress changes what feels urgent. Expectation changes what looks relevant. Overload can make a useful signal disappear inside ordinary noise. That is why provision without recognition can feel exactly like absence. Something can be present and still fail to become meaningful to you. Think about how often this happens in simple life. Someone gives advice that makes sense only weeks later. An idea returns again and again, but you keep dismissing it. A small opening appears, yet you overlook it because it does not match the picture in your head. This is not a reason to treat every coincidence as a sign. It is a reason to become more honest about the condition in which you are trying to discern. Ask yourself 5 questions before Saturday gets noisy. What has repeated 3 times recently? What decision have I been postponing? What feels simple but important? What information did I dismiss too quickly? What choice already has enough evidence for one small step? Notice the wording. One small step. Not a life sentence. Not a guarantee. Not a dramatic leap. The goal is not to force certainty. The goal is to reduce the distance between what is present and what you can recognize. Now bring your attention to your body for a moment. Notice your jaw. Notice your shoulders. Notice your breathing. Do not fix anything. Just notice the state of the receiver. If your body is tense, your mind often reads ordinary uncertainty as threat. If your attention is scattered, even simple choices can feel complicated. The world did not necessarily become less clear. Your access to clarity may have narrowed. This is why more signs do not always create more clarity. Sometimes less noise does. Imagine walking into Saturday with that understanding. You are not scanning every hour for proof that something big is happening. You are not demanding a supernatural feeling before you act. You are watching patterns. You are listening carefully. You are giving one useful thought enough space to finish. Maybe you notice that the same person has mentioned the same opportunity twice. Maybe you finally see that one task keeps returning because it is unresolved. Maybe you recognize that your next move has been obvious, but emotionally uncomfortable. That moment is the recognition threshold, meeting the receiver gap. One explains what becomes visible. The other explains why it can remain hidden. If this part speaks to you, say it quietly. I release the noise. Not all noise is external. Some of it comes from the demand to know everything before doing anything. Some comes from comparing your path to someone else. Some comes from asking 10 people a question you already understand. This is where another problem begins, because sometimes the receiver is clear enough. Sometimes the evidence is already present, and still you wait. Why? Because there is a point where asking for more clarity stops being discernment and starts becoming avoidance. That is the trap we need to name next. You have already seen how fragmentation can hide what matters. Now you need to see how fear can keep you standing still even after what matters becomes visible. There is a sentence that sounds wise but can quietly keep you stuck. I just need one more sign. Chosen one. Sometimes that sentence is discernment. Sometimes it is delay, wearing the language of caution. Real discernment looks for enough truth to make a responsible move. Avoidance keeps asking for certainty that life rarely gives. This is the last sign trap. You know the next step, but you want another confirmation. You understand the conversation you need to have, but you wait for a perfect moment. You have enough information to test an idea, but you keep researching. The common explanation is that you are being careful. But caution can become a shield when the real fear is making a choice and discovering that you cannot control the outcome. That is the hidden mechanism. Confirmation seeking can protect you from responsibility for a decision. If you never decide, you never have to face the discomfort of being wrong. But the cost is real. You stay in the same place while calling the stillness wisdom. Discernment asks, do I have sufficient reason? Avoidance asks, can I remove all uncertainty first? Those are not the same question. So here is a simple tool. I call it the enough test. First, do I know the next step? Second, is that step reversible or reasonably low risk? Third, will waiting give me new information or only temporary emotional relief? If you know the next step, if the step can be corrected, and if waiting adds no real information, then you may already have enough clarity to move. Clarity is not certainty. Clarity is enough truth for the next step. Picture what this changes on Saturday. Maybe the big action is not dramatic. Maybe you send one email, you make one call, you set one boundary, you submit one application, you protect one focused hour. This is why Saturday does not need to become supernatural to become significant. It only needs to become the day when recognition turns into movement. Now remember the question from earlier. I asked what the condition of the receiver really means. I also told you I would return to research once you understood the full shape of the problem. You understand it now. Fog can hide what matters. Fragmentation can weaken access. Expectation can narrow what you notice. And confirmation seeking can keep you still after clarity has already arrived. So now the question becomes more precise. If insight is real, why does insight still fail to become movement? Why can someone understand exactly what is happening and still feel as if the mind does not fully cooperate? That is the missing piece. The why is simple. You may have been calling non-recognition delay. The what is also simple. Attention, overload, and repeated hesitation can change how easily you notice and act on useful information. And the who matters most. You do not need to become more chosen. You do not need a new identity. You need a clearer state from which to recognize and respond. That is who you have been. That is not who you are required to stay. The clarity you have received is real, but clarity alone is not movement. The door may already be visible. The remaining question is whether your current state helps you walk through it. Earlier, I said the receiver would become more literal. Now we are ready to close that loop. There is research worth looking at here, not because a laboratory can predict your future, but because science can help us understand the machinery behind attention, coordination, and access. And once that mechanism is clear, the word receiver will no longer sound like only a metaphor. Earlier, I said the receiver would become more literal. This is where that loop closes. Not because science can tell you what Saturday will bring, it cannot. But science can help us think more carefully about how the brain coordinates information, attention, and response. In 1981, Dr. Roger Sperry received the Nobel Prize for research that changed how scientists understood the specialized functions of the brain hemispheres. His work did not prove destiny or any guaranteed life outcome. It helped reveal how different parts of the brain can contribute differently to perception and behavior. That matters here because the mind is not one simple switch. It is a coordinated system. Different networks contribute to language, spatial processing, memory, attention, emotion, and decision-making. When people feel clear, many of those processes are working together well enough for useful information to become actionable. This is where the receiver metaphor becomes practical. You can have information in front of you and still struggle to organize it. You can know what matters and still feel scattered. You can have a good idea and fail to hold it long enough to act. The product I am about to describe is positioned around that problem. The scientific history is real, but it should not be confused with proof that one audio track can guarantee a specific personal result. A woman from California described using this approach after a long period of feeling mentally crowded and emotionally distant from her own life. She reported feeling clearer and less overwhelmed after using it consistently. That is her experience, not a promise for everyone. A man from Texas described something similar from a practical angle. He said the fog that had become normal for him began to feel less dominant, and decisions became easier to organize. Again, that is an individual report, not proof of a guaranteed outcome. The tool is called the Genius Switch. It is an 8-minute targeted auditory sequence designed to be used with headphones while you relax. The product describes its method as neural sync technology, with the goal of supporting what it calls whole brain activation. The company connects that positioning to ideas about hemisphere coordination and the research tradition following Dr. Roger Sperry. That does not mean the Nobel Prize tested or endorsed this product. Keep those things separate. If you have tried generic meditation tracks or other audio products before, the distinction is simple. This is not presented as a mood track. It is presented as a structured auditory sequence intended to support coordinated brain activity. This will not be relevant to everyone. It may be relevant if you want a low-effort, daily audio routine and mental clutter is a real problem. According to the product information, the regular listed price is $49. The current offer described on the official page is $39, with 4 digital bonuses and lifetime access. Those bonuses include a guided visualization, a grocery shopping guide, a classic manifestation book, and a 5 habits infographic. The offer also states that purchases are covered by a money-back guarantee under the terms shown on the official page. If the page still shows that pricing when you visit, you can review it there. I will not create a false deadline for you. Read the details, check the terms, decide with a clear mind. If you choose to look at it, use the official link in the description or pinned comment so you are viewing the actual offer being discussed. The Genius Switch does not replace sleep. It does not replace medical care. It does not replace judgment, discipline, faith, or real-world action. It is an optional tool. A tool can support a state. It cannot make your decisions for you. Saturday still belongs to you. What matters now is how you enter it. Even the best tool is useless if your day begins with the same noise, the same scattered attention, and the same habit of waiting for perfect certainty. So we return to the practical path. The product was never the destination of this message. The deeper question is still the same. How do you enter Saturday in a way that makes recognition easier? Use a simple 4-step protocol. First, reduce. For the first 30 minutes of the day, do not begin by scanning for signs. Do not let your phone decide what deserves your attention. Give your mind a quiet opening before the world starts assigning priorities for you. Second, notice. Write down 3 things. What keeps repeating? What needs a decision? What have I been avoiding? Keep the answers plain. You are not trying to decode the universe. You are trying to notice your own unfinished signals. Third, choose. Pick one action that is small enough to be reversible and clear enough to complete. One email, one application, one conversation, 1 hour of focused work. Before you choose, look at the 3 answers you wrote. Which one carries real consequence if ignored? Which one becomes lighter the moment you imagine handling it? That is often where useful attention begins. Fourth, move. Do it before your mind builds 20 new reasons to wait. Movement creates information that endless thinking cannot. When you act, you create information that thought alone cannot give you. Now picture a room filled with static. Every screen is on, every sound competes, every light flashes. You cannot hear the one voice that matters because everything has equal volume. Then imagine switching off one source of noise at a time. One screen, one alert, one unfinished decision, one unnecessary opinion. The room gets quieter. You are not forcing a message to appear. You are creating enough space to hear what was already there. That is Saturday. Not a performance, not a hunt for signs. A cleaner meeting between attention and action. And remember the enough test from earlier. Do I know the next step? Is it reasonably low risk or reversible? Will waiting give me new information or only temporary emotional relief? Use those questions before you turn uncertainty into another week of delay. If the resource I described earlier feels relevant to you, the details are in the description and pinned comment. Review them carefully and decide for yourself. Then come back to the larger point. No tool can recognize your life for you. No track can send the message, set the boundary, finish the application, or tell the truth that you already know needs to be spoken. Your life does not change because you watched for a sign all day. It changes when recognition becomes response. So ask yourself one final question. When does a day actually become big? Is it when something dramatic happens around you? Or is it when you become clear enough to stop walking past what matters? Hold that question. We are closing the entire loop now. Chosen one. This is where everything comes together. The recognition threshold, the fog loop, the receiver gap, the enough test. They were never 4 separate ideas. They were 4 views of the same problem. You can be surrounded by possibility and still experience life as delay when attention is scattered, self-trust is low, and every decision is forced to wait for perfect certainty. So before we close, do one thing. If you are somewhere safe, let your eyes rest for a moment. Feel your jaw loosen, let your shoulders drop, notice your feet. Picture Saturday as an ordinary day. No golden light, no dramatic announcement, no guarantee that anything outside you changes on command. Now picture yourself entering it differently, clearer, quieter, available. You do not need to know everything. You only need to notice what matters. Take one slow breath. Let this sentence land. I do not need perfect certainty to take the next honest step. That is the answer to the question we opened with. Why can Saturday be a big day? Not because the calendar contains magic, Not because anyone can predict your future. Saturday becomes a big day when it becomes the day you stop confusing, waiting with blindness. It becomes the day you stop demanding one more sign after enough truth is already present. It becomes the day you notice what matters and respond. Maybe nothing dramatic happens. Maybe the turning point is one message you finally send, one boundary you finally name, one decision you finally make. Maybe it is simply the first day in a long time when you stop abandoning your own attention. That is enough. You do not need to shame yourself for the time you lost. Release the need to punish yourself for fog. Release the demand for total certainty. And if you want a declaration to carry with you, say this slowly. I am available to what is real. I am clear enough for the next step. I am willing to recognize what matters. I am willing to move when I know enough. I am still chosen. I am still becoming. I am here. If this is the decision you are carrying into Saturday, write this. I am ready to recognize. Not as a prediction, as a commitment. You do not need another dramatic sign to begin paying attention. You do not need the whole road before you take one step. Saturday does not need to become supernatural, to become significant. You only need to meet it awake. It is sealed.